Do you hear that? That's the sound of someone who doesn't know how Sekiro works, just spamming deflect and hoping for the best. But really, can you blame them? Sekiro does not work the way that people think it does. In fact, even people that have mastered FromSoftware's well-disguised rhythm game have some, questions. So I have dissected this black sheep in FromSoftware's catalog, and today we're going over the best bosses and weirdest bosses in the game so that we can all appreciate the fact that Sekiro frame data is completely insane. And before we jump into Sekiro, why not have Sekiro as my browser wallpaper? How about some Dark Souls keyboard sounds integrated into my browser? And if I'm feeling it, let's have some Elden Ring background music built in as well. All with today's sponsor, Opera GX. Opera GX is a web browser that gaming fans can customize into just about any fandom that they're into. Other browsers are super boring, they look and act the exact same, so using GX mods, you can mix and match multiple mods and components to create your own fantasy browser. They have mods that have iconic game sounds for opening and closing tabs, customized splash screens, and you can even go as far as customizing UI icons, font, and even shaders to add an effect to an entire screen. If you really want to, you absolutely can. Beyond customization, Opera GX allows you to pop out videos like a lore video you can watch as you shop online. Like a magic wand, you just click the button on the left, and now that windowed video will travel with you to any tab that you open. Even tabs you open that are littered with ads, because Opera GX has an easily turned on ad blocker built into the browser. It's a lot of cool stuff that is extremely easy to set up because you can use their quick import tool to quickly import all your settings from your previous browser to Opera GX, like browsing history, bookmarks, and cookies. It's also compatible with every Google Chrome extension. Thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Download Opera GX today using my link below. And now back to the video. To understand how Sekiro works, you first need to understand who is behind every player interaction. The real final boss of the game, Wolf. He is the source of the game's core mechanic, deflecting. You might say, oh, like parrying in Elden Ring. I know how to do that, that's easy. No, Sekiro does not have parrying. For parrying in all other FromSoftware games, the parry window is a set point in an enemy's animation. If you have active parry frames interacting with their parry window, bada bing, bada boom, you get a big damage. Now in Sekiro, there is no parry timing. There is no deflect timings either. It's all a myth. Kind of. Technically, it's all relative. Essentially, when an enemy's active hitbox overlaps with the player, the game checks if Wolf is in the active frames of his deflect animation. Now immediately, players rejoice. The deflect animation, that's this one. Just hold LB, we've solved the game. No. Essentially, when Wolf puts up his guard, he has a specific amount of frames in which if he is hit, it will result in a deflect. Well, that's easy. Just get that fingy ready to blast the deflect button at 60 frames a second and hope your wife doesn't walk in and see you've been holding out on her. Well, actually, they did think of that too. Wolf has many different deflect animations that look the same but do not have the same amount of active deflect frames. Fun fact, he has double the active deflect frames when he does a run-up deflect for reasons. Anyway, if you press deflect in too rapid succession, Wolf will start using deflect animations with less and less parry windows all the way down to a third of his normal window. This is something both pros and noobs know well. Why? Because it even happens with any combo that requires you to deflect in rapid succession. Do you remember this, crackhead? Ever felt like you nail the first deflect timing but get sloppy by the end of it? That is why. You actually need to be more precise the longer the combo goes on because your window of opportunity gets narrower and narrower as you go. What is that noise? Oh, that's right. We need to talk about jumping. What you're seeing right now is the most generosity I have ever seen in any FromSoftware game ever. This wireframe around Wolf indicates that he is invincible to sweep attacks, and it starts the second his little toesies leave the floor and lasts all the way till he's literally like on the ground. You'll see how broken this is when we cover Isshin at the end of this video. So we've covered deflections with Wolf, jumps, but this is a From Software game. What about rolling? Well, it does exist in Sekiro, but at best it has half of the iframes that you're used to from other games. So new players find out that that is not really the best way to play the game. That about covers Wolf. Now let's take a look at some bosses. Chained Ogre. Don't worry, he can't hurt you from here, but he can grab you from here. But keep in mind a few things. Now, I know what you're thinking. You thought it was going to be way bigger than it actually is. My wife knows the feeling well, but keep in mind a couple things here. Number one is that he does have this variation where he runs up on you, which actually has a slightly larger hitbox for the grab, but that doesn't really explain stuff like this. Slow that down and you'll notice the character does get clipped by the grab, and then the ogre immediately rotates into position to start the animation sequence. So frustration with stuff like this in the game has less to do with hit detection and a lot more to do with animation blending when those hits are detected, and people not realizing that you have half the frames for rolling than you're used to. But I'm dancing around the real grab that everybody wants to see. It is weird. So clearly they have sized up hit detection substantially on this one, which isn't uncommon. But what's interesting is the inclusion of this detector on his head and neck for the grab, which I'm assuming helps contribute to frustrations that he just kind of becomes a big ball of grab. But without it, I think it would be way too easy to just stick close to him to avoid it for the majority of the whole grab. But beyond that, I have never seen them start a grab at a certain hitbox size and then shrink it throughout the animation in any other game. I don't know if it was some kind of like a patch or like a nerf that people were fired up about it, so they just decided to make it smaller halfway through. I'm not sure. But really, we've just scratched the surface with how weird this dude is. Now, do you remember this big old body slam? What would you assume the hit detection is when a giant ogre slams his entire body down? You were wrong. It's this. This actually pissed me off when I saw this because I know that I died to this attack on my first playthrough, which I now just feel immense shame over. But you know what? Maybe it is a normal size and it just looks really small on such a big guy. I've heard Shaq has the same problem. So surprisingly, a lot of his hit detection isn't really that crazy. His kicks last very few frames, his smash attacks have no AoE, and even his two-leg kick, for some reason, also just shrinks in size. So overall, he's weird, and he kind of doesn't fit in the game, but he's a lot more chill than people realize. Blazing Bull. Alright, I'll give it to you. This one sucks ass. First, ignore the hit detection that you're seeing here. That doesn't damage you, it just damages the enemies and the destructible area around you. But what does hit you is this hit detection contained within it at certain times. That's going to be the wooden plank and the giant hitbox on his head and neck for this frontal charge attack. This entire fight is just trying to get around to his ass because the front is filled with attacks like this. But you'll notice the hit detection ends significantly earlier on the far side, which is annoying because it starts to just feel like random when you are and aren't going to be hurt from his head movement. The final point being when he roots his head in place to turn around, there is no hit detection and you are free to stab him in the face. I have for years avoided that, thinking that there was some kind of hit detection there, but nope, you're free and clear. Guardian Ape. One of the most terrifying bosses in all of gaming. An epic battle between you and an undying monster that farts and pulls shit from its ass to throw at you. Never thought I'd be showing you hitboxes of literal farts and shit, but here we are. Now, for the serious attacks of this boss, they are what you would expect, with his arms making up the majority of the active hit detection and the occasional full body slam. But they did take the extra effort in coordinating every swing of his arms and legs in this flailing attack, but I was surprised to see that there's no body hit detection when he actually backflops. He can literally just fall on you and it's fine. But if he falls on you with this grab, it's not fine. Not at all. Clips like this made me think that he must have hit detection on both arms, but actually the grab detection is larger than his actual arm swing hitbox, but it's still only on the one arm, but that arm stays active through the roll all the way to the opposite side. But with some trial and error, you successfully slay the beast. Well done. Okay, Demon of Hatred. Oh wait, this game is evil. So now, as the headless ape, things actually get kind of weird. They have the sword hitbox as you would expect, but really inflated his arm hitbox, which creates some uniquely different deflect timings depending on where you are when he attacks. You could imagine the feel of the deflection timing would be quite different when you're close up and deflecting this large arm hitbox than for the small sword weapon when at a distance. I think they must have enlarged the arm detector after playtesting because it's not on all attacks, maybe ones that weren't an issue where the boss is clearly lunging directly at the player. Something weird you need to keep in mind with Sekiro is that you actually want the bosses to hit you. The game is not about avoiding damage and draining the boss's health like in other Souls games. It's about countering damage and breaking the boss's posture, with health being really a secondary mechanic. You could see how if you were nailing your deflect timings but weren't getting any posture damage on a boss because it was just whiffing attacks, that would actually be pretty frustrating for the player. Now, to close this guy out, I was super confused by this scream hit detector in-game. You'll notice that it gets bigger and smaller and bigger again as it goes off, which didn't make any sense why they would do that. I'll give you a second to watch it to see if you can see what's happening. All right, it's super obvious once you know. The source of the scream is not the headless ape. It's literally the head the scream is coming from, which, duh. But because of the movement while it's screaming, the circular hit detector is sometimes more and sometimes less in contact with the surface the player is on, which can cause a bit of confusion for the player because it can be a little inconsistent, I guess, but I personally like it. It's the super realistic option. Demon of Hatred. This boss feels like a Bloodborne or a Dark Souls 3 boss to me. If I showed you this attack, would you assume this is from a precisely timed sword deflecting game? I wouldn't. But unlike typical Souls games, some of the bloated hitboxes are now a welcome addition here, like the size of his arm and hand hitboxes. You want to be hit to build up that sweet posture damage. And for those that requested, here is the full body charge hit detection and his projectile hit detection, which doesn't have any AoE, which fits right in with most attacks not having AoE in this game, except when we get to the later parts of this fight. This is where things definitely start feeling like they're from a different game. Oddly, you can still deflect those attacks, or more likely just run away from them, but in similar FromSoft fashion, inconsistent ground causes some inconsistent hit detection. Specifically, these encircling flame hit detectors. The flame SFX position is based on the ground layer, but the hit detection is universally sized and parallel positioned. So you end up with certain areas you could jump through flames without taking damage due to the lower ground, and others where, well, not so much. So if you're backed up to a wall of flame, roll the dice. Genichiro. Ah, my perfect special boy. Literally one of my favorite bosses. And it's a good thing because he keeps coming back for more and more ass kicking. So today we'll just focus on the final fight with him. First off, his special attacks are fast as shit. This is 5% game speed, and it's still far from slow motion. So from the start of his movement of the slash to when the actual hitbox is on you, it is about 300 milliseconds. The average human visual reaction time is 250 milliseconds. So it's doable, unless you have below average reaction time, and then you kind of just need to know that shit's coming. And then on top of that, he has a 7-hit combo, which we already know has decreasing deflect frames for you to work with as the combo goes on. But there really is something just orgasmic about nailing all 7 of those. Am I right? Come on. Now, for my final point, let me ask you a trivia question. Between the giant monkey boss and the regular dude with a sword, which of these guys do you think can grab you with his feet? That's right, it's the regular dude running at you with his open hand to grab you, and for some reason has active grab hit detection on his feet so that he can grab you with his gorilla grippers. I really don't even know why, but I have my suspicions. Great Shinobi Owl. There are a few interesting facts about this guy, the first being that in his owl father fight, deflecting his shurikens builds up posture damage. If he breaks posture in the air, they didn't really think about that, and so he just immediately rockets to the ground and you teleport into him to do a death blow. Beyond that, he has an arm hitbox to prevent players from just staying close to avoid attacks, but in an update after release, they added several attacks, and I completely forgot about that. So yeah, you can just stay close to avoid a bunch of these. And finally, on this attack, his attack is invoked 8 times throughout the attack, which is fine normally because you get pushed back after you take 1. But if you use the umbrella, you can build posture damage for every single one of those attacks. It's ridiculous. Huge thanks to MyMaidIsKitchenAid for helping explain and find a lot of this stuff. You can download his mod, Gain Spirit Emblems During Combat, in the link in description. Thanks again. And now, before the final boss, here are some honorable mentions that were the most requested. Great Serpent. Overall, pretty simple, but you'll notice his body is free and clear of hit detection after the initial strike. His whole sequence after being stabbed in the eye is as you would expect as well. Not like you would be getting close to him after that anyway. And then for his final strike, they opted to just put detection on the mouth, and then they add the body after the strike. Snake Eyes. I personally have had serious beef with these mini bosses. I wasn't surprised to see the weapon hitbox be exactly as you would expect, but I was surprised to see the notorious grab hit detector be really nothing special. I was expecting something huge and exaggerated and bullshit, but it's not. I'm bad. It does cover the entire weapon, not just the tippy tip, so there's that. But I think the fear of it has something to do with the high tracking it has, just like every other enemy and boss in the game. But do you want to know something stupid though? You can deflect it. Just when he pulls back, when the hitbox activates, just make sure you're in your deflect frames and you're good. Why can you deflect a grab in the game? I don't know. Who is this guy? Crap, I can't remember his name.
My name is Kyobu Masataka Oniwa!
Oh, that's right. How could I forget? This made me laugh my ass off because I get annoyed that sometimes his attacks miss and I was trying to deflect it for posture damage. Turns out FromSoft is frustrated with it too because they can't make this hitbox any bigger than it already is compared to his super skinny spear. They really tried. So with other bosses, they just crank up rotation speed to make sure attacks close in on you. But this guy's on a horse and has the turn radius of a boat. It's all good for attacks to miss in games like Elden Ring horse battles, but in Sekiro, God, it can be kind of annoying. Ashina Elite. This guy has the coldest gaze for a man that is wearing no pants and a loincloth. But seriously, you thought Genichiro was fast? yet again, this 5% speed is absolutely insane. Between his first attack hitting you and his second, you have 200 milliseconds to release the first deflect and fire the second. Good luck. Mist Noble. You'd be surprised to hear the Mist Nobles are not spawning an area of effect hitbox for their terror buildup. Instead, they are shooting tiny hitbox detectors at lightning speeds at you to build up terror, which is why the buildup stops when you get out of line of sight, because whatever you're hiding behind is actually terminating those hitbox terror buildup detectors because they're hitting the wall. Pretty cool. Contrast that with Headless.
So no head?
Who does emit terror detection like a standard AoE coming from him as the origin point. And lastly, here is the grab detection for his grab attack. And you might be wondering, why are his hands so brown? I've looked through every piece of lore I can possibly find to piece together why his hands and wrists are so brown. I guess we'll never know. And now for the big finale of the game and this video, Sword Saint Isshin. Not surprisingly, this is a very well-built boss. There's a reason he is considered some people's favorite boss in all of gaming. But he does have some small quirks and interesting stuff. Like, this particular sword draw has the only instance I know of where the hit detection grows in size as the weapon is unsheathed. And again, in proper FromSoft fashion, it is not consistent on similar attacks. Doesn't really make a big difference, but kind of fun. What's also fun is nailing a Mikuri counter on his ass. But also, they actually have their own hit detection on all stab attacks in the game, the larger hit capsule here being a more generous detector to trigger a counter than the smaller damage hit detector. Which makes sense, unlike this bizarre sweep attack. So for starters, there is this inexplicable gap in the middle of the attack, but also that this entire attack is miscoded. So it can't be blocked or deflected like a sweep attack, but Isshin is also vulnerable to a sweep counter, okay, but the hitbox itself is marked as a normal attack, so you don't get those generous jump iframes we talked about earlier. Then lastly, his shoulder hitbox can damage you if you try to stomp on him. It makes absolutely no sense, so if you get hit by it, hashtag blame the game. Now we need to go in-game to visualize his special attacks. First being this vertical air slice, which happens in an instant in-game, but you'll notice the initial blast does not damage you. Then, from what I've seen, you should be able to jump to avoid these floor hit detectors and avoid damage altogether. Not what I was expecting at all from this, especially when compared to another attack in the same art style where the air slices are just a set of hit detectors expanding away the further they get. And then lastly, his horizontal slice, which is beautiful in how simple it is. Giant tube, get shit on, noobs. And now to finish with the cherry on top of this whole fight, the electricity deflect attacks. It looks intimidating as hell, but in reality, knowing what we know about its simple hit detection and the insane generosity of jump iframes, it isn't bad at all. As long as you are in those jump frames when the start of electricity hits you, all you need to do is attack in the air, and you get your own tube, much bigger than his is, to bitch slap him back. The best fight, best deflect in the game by far. And that's it, babes. If you want to see more frame data stuff, check out the playlist here or check out the channel. I promise you will not be bored. If you want to support the channel more directly, consider supporting us on Patreon, becoming a channel member, or on Twitch. But as always, thanks for watching.